Hi, this is Sandy, and I'm here with Daniel. It's been a little while. Hi, Daniel.
Yeah, hi. It's been way too long.
I know, I know,
Yeah,
but we're back.
yeah, we're back. We took a little COVID break, but we're back and we have a really, really good guest. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yep. So let's introduce our guest really quick. We've
Yeah.
got Justin Graham from Microsoft, and if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, Justin, and then we'll head into our regular segments, and then we'll talk more in depth later.
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Justin Graham. So I work in the Power Platform at Microsoft. I specifically lead two areas, our Cloud Flows DPA business for Power Automate, as well as our ecosystem integrations and connectors for all of the Power Platform.
Thanks. Great. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that.
Absolutely.
Sounds like a good role, by the way.
Yeah.
Super
really
fun.
good role.
Okay. All right. And you can find Justin on Twitter at JustinGR, and his LinkedIn is there as well. So first, as usual, we'll go into some Power Automate news, and we're not going to catch you all the way up from the last time that we were here. So we'll just look at what came out in January and so far in February. So first of all, and you may have noticed this already, but there is now more in-depth in-product help in Power Automate. So it's always been the case, I think, that there was, if you had an action or a trigger, that you could get to the documentation right from the top bit of the trigger. But now there's the question mark, and that will open up a whole help pane on the right and give you different things that you can go to. So it'll give you help about the trigger or action itself and take you to that documentation, which I always find really useful. I would say most of what I work with is people just starting out in Power Automate, and I tell them always click on that, learn more, find out more about your connection that you're using, your connector that you're using, and what all the different triggers and actions are, and the parameters and all that kind of stuff. But this gives you even more. So it also gives you some content coming from the Power Automate community. And also in some cases, which I think is expanding, there is the possibility of chatting with a bot on the side there to find out more about that particular connection. I think there's just maybe the email and a couple other ones that have that available currently, but I think that'll be expanding. So that's pretty cool, I think.
More on the way. More content.
More on
the
way.
So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but there's definitely more on the way, I promise.
Yeah.
Great.
I really like the chatbot, but because I believe it's a Power Virtual Agent as well, right?
Right,
So
it is.
That's really cool to see that they include their own product inside of the product. That's really nice.
Yep. All right, next up, I switched my button. We've got the Approvals app that's now in Microsoft Teams. So that gives you a way to view the approvals that you have within Power Automate, for one thing. So it gives you kind of another sort of dashboard. I mean, you've always had, or pretty much always had, the approvals center in Power Automate itself, and then you can see the approvals on your mobile device too, and you can see them in your emails. But this gives you yet another place in Teams, which is where most of us spend our days. So now you can add the approvals app to your left-hand sidebar and view those approvals, whatever the status of them are. But you can also actually initiate little approvals right within Teams that don't even need a flow behind them. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh my gosh, why would you do that? Because that's just like rampant, I don't know, like they're not connected to anything or anything. But then I looked at the lookbook that's available at that link. There's a link to Approvals in Teams lookbook. And then I got it. So I can see really a lot of use cases for that, where you just want to kind of ask somebody to say yes or no on some question that you have, or get approval, like, can I publish this, or can we do this or that? And then that's a way then to keep track of those approvals. Like it's not just floating in their chat somewhere. and lose track of who you've asked and whether or not they've responded and so on. Because in that sort of dashboard view, you can filter it and see like which ones are just requested and haven't been responded to yet. So you could then go through your things that have been requested of you or that you've requested and get those straightened out. So very cool, actually, I think, in the end. I was doubtful at first, but I think I'm a convert now.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to see that that also you can just create an approval through this interface, and you don't have to create a Power Automate flow behind that. It's just really simple for people who are just onboarding approvals, and whenever they get more advanced at Power Automate, for instance, they can still extend it, of course. But this is just a really easy way to work with approvals, and I think that's really powerful.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of interest in this feature since we launched it a few weeks ago. It's been really just amazing to see folks already diving in and starting to use it at a very high level of scale.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Cool. So from your telemetry, you can see it's being used a good bit?
Yeah, it's being we're getting lots of feedback, lots of activity, and folks using it. So it's been fun to watch and fun to get the feedback.
Oh, great. Okay.
Cool.
Perfect. Does it still have? Are there still things going to be added to it? Different additional features or?
Software is never finished. Software, there's no done in software. Yes, we will be continuing to invest in expanding this capability over quarter over quarter. So you'll see some interesting, awesome new things coming up every quarter.
Cool. All right. Great.
Nice.
And then we've had lots of new connectors since the last time we met, but there were 12 new ones in January. I personally don't know anything about any of those except for the 365 training. I think I know the people who are behind that, but I haven't actually used their platform before. But yeah, always new connectors being added. Every time I create slides for an intro to Power Automate, I've got to recheck the number and say, yeah, they're now over 450 or whatever there is now.
Yes, over 450, and we've added over 100 new connectors since April 1st of last year. So,
wow.
Which incredible number, and we're kind of on track to continue to add, quite a bit more a month as we continue to move forward. Now, I'll talk a little bit later about what our thinking is around the ecosystem and how we're approaching this. But yeah, we're really excited.
Okay, great, perfect.
Very cool.
Okay, and now this is the part where Daniel takes over because you know more about RPA.
Yeah, so one of the things that's been improved is RPA in a day. The first version of RPA in a day, I believe that was also with Win Automation and UI flows back in the day, but they improved that, they changed it around. It's currently based on Power Automate Desktop. And they recently also added the Process Advisor module in there. So that's really cool to see as well. And it's a really nice way to start your journey in RPA within Power Automate. And I think that it's a really good addition to also the Docs modules, etc., the Microsoft Learn modules that you already have. So it's there's lots of learning possibilities there. So yeah, if you haven't yet, make sure to try it out.
For people who might not be aware, can you tell us a little bit about what Process Advisor is?
Yeah, so Process Advisor is kind of process mining. So if you know what process mining is, recording your processes, how they work now, and see or get valuable insights around that. So you can, for instance, get all the bottlenecks inside of a process, or see where the bottlenecks are within your process if you are not aware yet about that. So you can, in Process Advisor, record a certain process, and then if you ask multiple people, they can all start recording. And then you can analyze that at the end, and you will see a whole diagram about how that process will go and how it actually works currently. and you can see all the bottlenecks in there, etc. And then you can, of course, start improving on that. So you can see, well, there's a bottleneck here. Maybe we should change that to make sure that the process will go a lot smoother.
Very cool. I remember Stephen talking to us about that when it was just sort of a gleam in his eye in one of the shows. It was maybe like a year and a half ago or so. It seems like it wasn't all that long ago, and now it's already out there.
Yeah.
Cool. And
yeah. Another one is the Power Automate Desktop update. Every month, there's actually a new update from Power Automate Desktop. And they have tons of new updates. So the first one is the variable value viewers that you can see now
say
in the
that
flow.
3 times fast.
Yeah, it's really hard to say that, but they are available now in the Flow Designer, and you can actually see when you, for instance, get data from an Excel worksheet, you can immediately see that in a table, like you can see here in the screenshot. The next one is to configure connection strings via the data link properties in SQL actions. So if you have a SQL action added to your flow, to your desktop flow, you can actually use this data link properties wizard to actually connect to your SQL connection. And then the last one, or no, almost the last one, is the performance improvements. So there's tons of performance improvements, and it will work a lot better, Power Automate Desktop, with less memory usage, etc. So it's really nice to have those as well. And next to that, they also included the Internet Explorer automation, that they don't have to disable protected mode anymore. So that's also a good one.
And I seem to recall hearing a lot of people saying that was something you must remember, or else.
Yeah, right? I actually am very lucky because I don't have any processes so far that use Internet Explorer. So I'm very lucky, but there's tons of applications still that need Internet Explorer, etc. So that's kind of, we have to manage that. So it's good that they improve on that. Another one is the automation of document processing with Power Automate. And this is really a cool solution that you can install on your environment. And what it does is it will create a process and a Power App and an AI builder part in there to actually see the document processing within your company. So whenever a supplier or a customer sends you an email with documents, it will end up in a service mailbox, and then you have Power Automate to automatically store those documents, and then AI Builder will process those, and at the end you can review the process documents within the Power App. And that's a whole solution that you actually get for free. You can just go to the link on this slide, and then there's probably a link somewhere with the documentation, and there's also a link to the installation page within Power Automate. And it's just a really cool solution that you can use.
Yeah, you just go to, in Power Automate, right? You go to the AI Builder section, expand that, and then you should see the document processing automate. Yeah,
I think so.
It's in preview currently.
Yeah, and soon there will be a video about that on John's channel. So
all right.
So a little bit of a cliffhanger.
All right.
And also, Power Automate Desktop improves every month. So the last update from this month actually adds run from here. So you can right-click on a step in your process and then run from there. You can have better configuration of actions, so it's more intuitively. So if you move to the next one, you'll see the screenshot of that, I believe. Yeah. So that way you can just insert special keys really easily. That's one of the things that has been added as well. And yeah, you can easily also use existing variables. You can select those really easily from the configure action menus, and then you can use those as well in your processes.
Okay, cool. Sounds like that's really rapidly changing all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the work ethic of the Power Automate desktop team. Also, if you look at how fast they went from Win Automation to Power Automate desktop, it's been pretty fast. So yeah, I don't have any idea how many people work on that, but so that might be the explanation of it. But it's changing really rapidly, so that's cool.
Sounds like we probably need to get someone from that team on the show sometime soon.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, next we're on to community highlights. And first up, we've got John Levesque has started a new series based around Grand Theft Auto, I guess. It says Grand Theft Automate. And John works for Microsoft, so it's not exactly community content, but it's around the community. And also, I just think it's a really fun idea. I saw some of the comments that he's gotten on that first video so far, things like, well, this is weird, but I like it, and things like that. So yeah, I see John's in the meeting. Do you want to just say anything about that, John? No.
No.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Sorry, guys, I was double muted. Yeah, it's just been a passion project of mine. Gaming is a huge passion of mine, and so to get to blend gaming and Power Automate, my two favorite things, it's something I tried to do for a long time unsuccessfully, and I think this is the first successful attempt at it. I appreciate you guys shouting it out. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, the next one is Eliza Benitez. She has a really cool series of episodes, and it's called What the Flow. And I really love that that series title, by the way. But she did a video about how to send a Teams meeting from Microsoft Dataverse or Dynamics 365, and she explains it really well. There's Graph API stuff in there, and she's configuring that with I think it's activity types, etc. It's really a lot of fun to see that video. So if you haven't yet, make sure to watch that, because you'll learn a lot about Dataverse and Dynamics 365 also in that video, as well as the Graph API stuff that you can use to send a Teams meeting, for instance.
Yeah, and she's so good at explaining things.
Yeah.
I think very clear. We also wanted to shout out a couple of new podcasts that have come from the community, from the Power Platform community. One is called Insert Home, and this is started by Business Apps MVPs Ashley Rogers and Ed Gonzalez. And they're talking with various community Power Platform community members about their journeys into tech, which I think is an interesting take. So it's a kind of more personal view of people who you might see presenting things at conferences around Power Automate and rest of the Power Platform too. But I think so far they've got episodes out with April Dunham and Azure McFarland. So really interesting to listen to those.
Yeah, and the other podcast we're going to highlight is Rapid Power, and that's the podcast that Vivek Bhavishi, he created that, and I believe you were also a guest in that.
I was, yes.
In that podcast,
I was on
right?
with Ed one episode, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's tons of people in there as well. I believe the last episode was with Brian Deng, and there's it's a really nice format, and there's some rapid fire questions, etc. during that the podcast as well, and yeah, it's a great listen. So make sure to subscribe to that podcast as well.
Yep. Okay, now it's time to speak with our guest, Justin. So we heard a little bit about you at the beginning, but maybe you could tell us some more about what it is you do exactly at Microsoft and how you got there.
I attend lots of meetings and write lots of documents.
That sounds like pretty much everybody.
So so I'm a product leader. So spent time at Microsoft, Amazon, and in a lot of time in the startup land as well, as a product leader across a number of different spaces. I think one of the most interesting things I've done in product is I worked for a company that if you have a car that has a nav system and you see the nice red, yellow, green lines for traffic, I worked for a company who probably created the data that that gave you your traffic data in your nav system or on your map, which was a pretty fun job. So I can tell you more than you ever wanted to know about how traffic patterns work. So within the context of Power Automate, I work in two of our businesses. The first is what we call cloud flows, or what may be known more broadly as digital process automation. So workflow and automation between applications that have APIs that are available. So and that also includes other parts of our product, like our lifecycle management, our integrations with other Microsoft apps like SharePoint or Teams. So the approvals in Teams app was actually worked on by a PM on my team and one of our engineering managers. That was really awesome. So we're really excited about that. And also the designer inside of Power Automate, so flow creation, flow management, things like that. And then that's a part of that's one of the sort of, I call it the three stools of Power Automate: cloud flows, and then there's RPA, UI flows, desktop flows, which is run by a peer of mine on our team, and then the process mining, process advisor capabilities, sort of the third stool. And then the second thing I do in terms of product is if you've ever used a connector in Power Automate or Power Apps, or even backing some of the Dynamics apps, that's a broader team that called Ecosystem Integrations that I run product for here in the Power Platform. So we think a lot about not only what new connectors do our customers asking for, but how do we expose more triggers within the existing connectors and get more depth in those existing integrations. So there's a great team of about 15 or so folks that work in that business.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I really like that's kind of my passion, the integrations. I love that. Like the Teams integration, the Dataverse integration, of course, with the model-driven apps, etc. Those kinds of things, but also the SharePoint side. I really like those kinds of ways to quickly include Power Automate inside of all those experiences, and I think that's so powerful because people work in their own way. It might be in Teams, it might be in SharePoint, it might be whatever. And if they can just pick and choose and just use the integration that they like, that's really powerful. And I think that people will get their work done easily because of that. So that's something that I really like. And if you can see how from the beginning of when it was Microsoft Flow still, those integrations have really grown. And I think the next iteration is the approvals app. That's kind of a thing also that you don't even know it's a Power Automate flow behind there. That's kind of the cool thing, right? Because it's just automation that they can do wherever they want, and that's something that's really nice to see.
Yeah, what always strikes my mind is there was a really famous commercial or set of commercials over the 90s and the 2000s from a particular company that slogan was, we don't make the things you use, we make the things you use better, right? Or we make we're behind the scenes making those things better. And Power Automate is a lot of that. I think one of the things I love about working in this area is, I'll ask people, hey, have you used Power Automate? And they'll be like, what's Power Automate? But then I'll be like, well, have you used an approval in Teams, or have you done this, or have you used that, or oh yeah, I love that thing in SharePoint where when I get notified when like somebody updates a document in my SharePoint,
Mhm.
oh, that might have, that's very well, there's probably Power Automate behind that, so I just love the fact that we're making people's lives better and easier, in that way, but to them, it's just like you mentioned, Daniel, it's just natural. It's just, in the natural course of them doing their work or their thing without needing to change anything, but all of a sudden, like one day it just got better, right?
Mhm.
And it continues to get better. And then I think when you mentioned, all of the the experiences in the other apps, I mean, one of the big, I'd say, pillars of our product strategy moving forward is, not making sure that people can come to Power Automate to use the product, but also bringing the product to where the users are, so they can use it with the context of what they love, or what they love using, in that way. So we think about that really, really deeply, and have folks really focused on making those experiences better. Especially Power Apps, Teams, SharePoint, to name a few, where we're just really getting a lot of vibrant feedback and usage in those areas where we're investing. So you'll see some more more coming down the line there.
There's also like Azure integrations, right? Because there's, of course, the SQL integration that you have, where you have a SQL database and you can do stuff there as well. Is there something more coming in that way as well? So from the Azure side to Power Automate, for instance, in a easy way. I know there's a Power Apps kind of thing, I believe, but
so we do work really closely with folks in Azure to just see where those opportunities are. I can't say anything specific at the moment in terms of what, but they're definitely, like, we definitely are. We meet with them regularly, and we work a lot with Logic Apps, as well, in making sure that there's clear use cases, on both sides, and that we can nicely help folks who are citizen makers as well as pro developers. Pro developers tend to shade a little more Azure, right? And then citizen makers shade a little more Power Platform. But we want to make sure that those fusion teams, or that, those things coming together, are really easy for folks to collaborate on. That's one kind of clear thing that we're working on. And then I think, another clear thing that comes to mind, and Sandy, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, where you talked about working with a lot of folks who are new to the Power Platform or newer to Power Automate, and just coming from spending a whole lot of time working in startup world, right? When you're a startup, you obsess over onboarding new users on product, and helping them get value out of your product as fast as possible, and then giving them even more value along the way. So I've been trained very heavily from startup land on obsessing over that part of it. So we are gonna be investing a lot in how do we help new users to Power Automate, get started from like minute 1, hour 1, day 1, week 1, week 2, month 1, etc.
Right.
So we're thinking really, really deeply about that, and we should hopefully have some things rolling out in the next, single-digit numbers of weeks.
Okay.
The PMs on my team are probably gonna not be happy I said that, but
Oh well, I mean, everybody knows
really,
there are announcements at Ignite.
You already poured pressure on us, but we think this is really. We think this is really important, right? Because, as we all know, we're all human, right? And in this day and age, attention spans are relatively short, compared to the past. So, if you come into a product and, you spend 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, and you can't kind of see your way through, right? Then you tend to just lose steam and want to go, I mean, how many people look at page 4 of Bing results anymore, right? Like, you're looking at page 1, maybe you get to page 2, and then you're like, okay, my search term was wrong. Let me type something in, something different in, right?
Yeah.
Every time you search term, like, you never get to page 3. So really, we're really focused on that as well. And as you mentioned in the Teams integration, right? It's just like, I think that the way approvals works and the ability to create an approval without having to create a flow behind that is really like a shining example of really new user onboarding, right? I mean, you're onboarding somebody to using approvals and they don't have to really know much about creating a flow or triggers or actions or whatever. It just works. So we're trying to think really deeply through how we help new users, just get started super quickly, and then, kind of, lead them in over time to the more, sort of medium and advanced capabilities like expression editing or loops, or, custom cards or custom actions or custom connectors or things like that, right? Like those are advanced concepts. You don't want to necessarily like throw somebody new and say, hey, like, why don't you build a custom connector for your very first thing, right? That you're doing with like how about we, try to identify, a place in your work life that might be like you might really benefit from just having an automation, like, when your boss emails you, or, when somebody updates a requirement in a document or an ADO list or something like that, right? That just helps you a little bit during your normal work.
Yeah.
And then I think that the help bit sort of plays into that. So I'll talk a little bit about our new help bot.
Okay.
That was one of the things that I always think about is, and again, more startup life training, right? I mean, if a user has to call you, or file a ticket for you to get something done, then like, we failed, right? So like, what I'm really obsessing about is like self-service in my mind is the new like software paradigm, right? I mean, self-service purchasing, self-service onboarding. I mean, users don't want to have to read a manual or like take days worth of training to learn how to, like, you want to go to a website, read about it for a minute, say, great, can I press a button and start using the thing? And then if I love it, can I just enter my credit card and you charge it, and then I start to use it? And then if I like have a question, can I like click a button and have something come up for me to read, or a video, like a quick video for me to watch? Like that's the paradigm, especially when you think about low code, right? I mean, this is all about, self-enablement and like not having to write custom code and all that stuff. So we're thinking a lot about that. So the chatbot is really aimed at in many ways making our documentation more approachable to users, right? So if you think about that whole paradigm of like, okay, I hit a wall, I don't know how to do something, then it's like, oh great, okay, now I got to back out of my work, the designer or what have you, and then I've got to go to a separate page and search for documentation, or I've got to go to the community and like open a thread and like hope somebody responds, or I have to, file a ticket, right? And that literally just takes you out of your mindset. So, in many ways, when you start using the bot, you can ask it questions. It will try to help lead you, to some quick answers. But if it can't, it'll give you categories of different areas you want to ask for help, and we're going to add to that category list, month over month. So you should see, a couple more popping up every month. And then, going through that, it will actually expose some of those topics to you in the bot. And then if for some reason you reach the end of our, what we put in there, you can just execute a search through the bot, and it will return search results from our documentation into that. And then we're working on how do we tie our knowledge base, our KB into the bot, and then how can we tie, other sources like community and other things into there. So like, you can have your flow that you're designing like right up here, and then right next to it on the same page in the same place, be entering with the bot. And then as a corollary to that, we also have contextual help, which if you click the little help bubble inside of a card, it will know, what trigger you're using or what connector is in that card, and it will surface relevant topics or relevant help to where you are, right? Which is just another aim of like, we don't want to have you leave that mindset, interface everything. Like I lose my train of thought all the time now. My son and my wife remind me of this. So it's like more like if you keep me focused and like give me contextual stuff, like I'll be much more effective, right? So we're really focusing heavily in that in that area as kind of like one kind of larger pillar of our thinking.
Mhm.
Oh, that's really good to hear. I think
Yeah,
everybody will
so
be happy to hear that.
yeah, so I think that also the templates, they got some kind of revamp also in Teams, I believe, with the quick configuration of certain templates, where you
Yes.
can just easily select your team, etc.
Yes.
I think that's one of those explanations or new capabilities that's really helpful for the newer users, that you don't want to configure everything, but if you just have a list of or a little form where you can fill in some details and then hit submit or create, that you already have your flow up and running within a couple of seconds. I believe that's really, really powerful.
And we think, I mean, different interfaces obviously have different user types, and even if it's the same user using different interfaces, they think differently depending on which place they're in. So like if I could be a Power Citizen maker, but if I'm in the context of Teams, right, I'm probably not thinking about custom expressions and writing loops and all of these other, like something happened in a message or a chat and I want to act on that thing. Like how quickly can I do that, right? So we think that paradigm really lends itself well to what you just mentioned, Dan, versus if you want to get more advanced or AP class for Power Automate, then maybe coming into the product and into the portal and doing a custom designer is a thing that you want to think about. So I think a lot of that stuff. Actually, you talked about connectors and integrations. So let me kind of expound on that a little bit, right? One of the things we hear, a couple very clear things from customers, right? One is we want more triggers and actions and available activity against the existing library of connectors that you already have. So we're thinking really deeply about how fast and how we do that in terms of making those existing connectors more robust and expose more functionality for those things. So we spend a lot of time working on Dataverse connectivity, specifically because we just know that that making Dataverse and Power Automate and all Power Apps all work together seamlessly is super important, and customers really benefit from even the smallest new things or tweaks or things that we make a huge impact on users' use. And same thing with our our integration to Power Apps as well. We have this saying internally that we call no cliffs, right? Which is anywhere you enter a Power Platform app or Power Platform product, you should be exposed to the richness of the functionality of the entire platform without having to continually switch interfaces or switch between things. So we spend a lot of time trying to think about working on exposing as much of the Power Automate functionality inside of the Power Apps Canvas Designer or model-driven apps without you having to like switch over to the Power Automate Designer, edit some stuff, and then switch back to Power Apps and do some more. Like, how can we just help you do that just in line with your experience? So we spend a lot of time there. And then I think the other thing we clearly hear is a connector is sort of one part of the integration or one part of connectivity or tying together multiple things, but there's other things that need to happen above that. So we're changing our thinking a lot towards from connectors to integrations. And what does that mean? Like the connectors are part of it, but logic's a part of it, templates are a part of it. And how do we think more holistically about giving if you come in and you're a customer and you just want to create a workflow or an automation between two relatively well-known products or well-used products, whether they're Microsoft or third party, right? You should it should be a rarity that you have to write a custom connector, right? That's the ultimate vision, or custom integration for yourself, right? Like you should at least be able to start from somewhere that gets you 60-70% of the way to what you're all like. Obviously there's always some custom, every company's different, right? But like you should be starting from near zero. So we're really working on that vision and thinking through.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple times about hearing from the customers and you get feedback and so on. So for our viewers, what's the best way for people to provide feedback to Microsoft about what they're seeing?
Yes. So we should have put my email address.
Send an email to.
We can put it in the description if you want us to.
Daniel knows. I'm pretty available in terms of response. I mean, I come from the school of customer obsession, right? So I get all of my vision direction from talking to customers. So I'll jump on a phone call almost any time. I keep an eye on the forums. I keep an eye on our MVP alias. If you've emailed me and given some feedback, you've probably seen a response from me that says, "This is great. How soon can we jump on a call? I want to understand more." Right. So I'm a pretty open book, and my team's a pretty open book in terms of engagement. So sending an email is fine. You can find me on LinkedIn and send me a LinkedIn message, and then we can connect. That way. I say that the worst way to connect, and I don't know, my friends' kids who are teenagers now say this a lot. It's like I definitely reached the age. I'm terrible on social, right? Like don't see me. Like it might be weeks before I see it. I don't even have Twitter on my phone. It's got a new S21 Ultra Samsung, and I haven't even installed Twitter yet. So don't tweet if you really want to engage. Don't tweet me. I clearly jumped the generational line on on that one for sure. But email, LinkedIn, are great ways to get in touch.
Okay, great. Anything else that you want to mention about things that are new in your area or things that are coming that you can talk about?
We talked about obviously what's going on in RPA and specifically with Power Automate Desktop. So I mean, that's just been super fun to watch. There's the velocity that the team operates under, and just the amount of functionality that they've been able to put into market in a relatively short amount of time is just really fun. And I think the one thing that comes top of mind, and just having a conversation with some folks about that too, which is it's lots of folks sort of think of RPA and DPA as these separate things, right? But there's a connectivity between those two things, right? That just kind of came top of mind to me that we're going to start to talk about, which is how to turning do certain things that start as robotic process automations, do they need to connect to digital process automations to achieve a larger goal, or vice versa, right? So how do we make that story easy? How can someone think about that or use in that way? And then I'm also super excited about Process Advisor. I mean, just the thought of being able to deeply understand processes and then tying that back to process automations that can happen from that data is just a super exciting space. So I'm super happy that's in preview, and then and about to hopefully get to GA soon. So really cool.
Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested actually in the whole Process Advisor kind of thing. Currently, it looks a lot like it's more of a RPA kind of thing. But of course, Cloud Flows is also a thing that could be one of the results of a analyzed process, of course, in Process Advisor. So can we expect a lot more from that side as well? So, for instance, ways to analyze a process and then maybe have a button where you can maybe cloud flow certain things, or how would you see that? Because I think that's one of the, like currently it's more of an analyzing thing, and I would love to see that transition to also solving the problem, right? So
yeah, as would I, right? And I think that's just a natural progression of how this, of how this will go, and how that value chain will get continually built upon, right? So it's something I know that's at the top of my mind as I'm thinking forward. How do we, and Stephen and everyone else in the team, we're just thinking like, how do we, as all these individual capabilities get more robust and more mature, but like, how do we also bring them better together? And I think like, if I, having spent time in a lot of different places, and as I think about just one of Microsoft's core differentiators, and it's always been, is like, things in the Microsoft ecosystem just work really well together, right? There's always been, I remember way back in the day when I worked on Windows Server, we launched the Better Together campaign between Windows Server and Windows Client, and Windows Server and SQL Server, and like it's just, you can go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? So I think we spend a lot of time in thinking as an ethos on making sure things work really well together. So like that theme will shine through as you see our roadmap being delivered on in the future.
Very cool.
Anything else that you want to leave us with, or did you have any other things that you wanted to talk about, Daniel?
No, I mean, I always say this, like, please give us your feedback. If we don't hear from you, don't assume that we know. As much as folks think, product leadership is like this crystal ball where we just magically know what customers need next or want next, it's actually not the case. Like the more we hear from you, the more we know, right? So
yeah.
Well, and I suspect that a lot of people are hesitant or wouldn't think that a behemoth like Microsoft is actually listening to the little people, but I feel like you really are, at least the past several years, especially, I think.
Yeah, we absolutely do. It's the lifeblood of what we do, and as we're writing product plans or reviewing specs, right? Like, nothing ever gets through the line without the question being answered. What have we heard from customers, or what customers have told us that this is an issue, or how do we know there's a problem? In fact, the first step that I have my team do when they have an idea is sort of write down a one-page document where they answer those questions, like, why, how do you know this is something that we should do? What customers have told you there's something that this is something important, right? How do we know this is a gap, whether through telemetry data or feedback, right? So we don't even advance ideas past the flicker in the eye unless we're able to answer those questions, right? So so it's really important.
Very good. Very cool.
So I have one more question, actually, and it's not really about Power Automate, but Justin, you started at Microsoft, I believe, after COVID hit, right?
I did, yeah. So I came back to the company in August. So we were, 5 months into COVID.
Yeah. So how was that? Because it would have been a totally different onboarding, right? So
yeah, but I think having spent a lot of time in the startup world, right? One of the newer trends, and you've seen lots of companies talk about this, but I think there's a few that are sort of leading in the space. GitLab's one of them, right? Of being full remote, right? Mm-hmm. And in the company I was with previously, we were mostly remote in terms of our operation, even prior to COVID. So that and I was we didn't up in Seattle, like there were only a few of us, so we've been kind of working from home, from that perspective anyway. So I think the only thing that changed for me is I don't go to the airport anymore, which I'm it's part of me sad about, but part of me's not. But for me, it's just normal operational mode of working. And in fact, I am quite enjoying not wasting 2 to 3 hours a day in the car.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
It's more time more time back with my family, quite frankly,
Mhm.
which has been great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we're all so lucky that we can do that in our
Yeah.
field.
Yeah, not everybody can, right? And I realize that we're pretty fortunate, in the tech space to be able to do that. So this is definitely not a brag by any sort, because just lots of people don't have that.
Right.
Don't have that choice. But I wouldn't mind forward vote for the rest of my career, but that's not my decision.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably a wrap for this month's episode, and we will definitely plan to be back in March.
We will.
Not leave it so long this time, but yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Justin. This has been really interesting to talk to you, and I'm happy to have met you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Bye.
Bye.